Now, the deadliest landslide in United States history happened 10 years ago today. Since then, the government has made progress on researching and understanding landslides, but it's still difficult to predict. Here's what we know about the Oso landslide 10 years later. March 22nd marks 10 years since the Oso landslide that killed 43 people in Oso, Washington, becoming the deadliest landslide in United States history. Oso is a rural area of a couple hundred residents. The neighborhood of Steelhead Haven is a subdivision of that, consisting of about 35 homes. On Saturday morning, March 22nd of 2014, the side of a hill collapsed in Steelhead Haven, coming down across the Stillaguamish River, burying the entire neighborhood under muck and debris. The highway running alongside was buried 20 feet deep. 36-year-old Summer Raffo was driving on State Route 530. She was on her way to shoe a horse when the landslide buried her, ripping off the roof of her blue Subaru. Her brother and his teenage sons went to go look for her. They spent 5 days digging through. When they found her, her hands were still on the wheel. The speedometer on her car read 60 miles per hour.
Ever since that day 3, when the reality set in, I knew that I'm going to explain to everybody how special my sister was to me, to my mom, to my entire family, and let them know who the person she was. And doing this memorial is doing that for me.
9 people survived the landslide, including a mother and a baby who were reunited in the hospital 2 weeks later.
The other thing that was very, very important to me was the first responders. We wanted a place, because there's a lot of them that are still struggling, and we wanted a place for them to come and reflect on what they did for our family and bringing everyone home, and the appreciation that we have for everything they did.
The trauma that ensued afterwards put dangerous landslides on the map. It was a wake-up call for the U.S. Washington officials began hiring more staff and mapping more areas to get a better handle on the landslide risk. Guidelines were also tightened regarding logging landslide-prone slopes.
There are hundreds of thousands of landslide risk areas in Washington State that we haven't even mapped, that we haven't been able to get that information to the community, to the planners and policymakers, and we could be putting more and more people at risk because we haven't done that work.
Now the federal government has a better strategy for understanding and researching the dangers that landslides can have. However, the efforts are still very new, so landslides can continue to wreak more havoc as climate change is only intensifying. When it comes to predicting landslides, it's still difficult, although some research has helped to establish what could happen with certain types of conditions.
Oftentimes landslides happen where they've happened before, and so if we can understand where landslides have happened in the past, that'll help us be aware of where they might occur in the future.
Since Oso, post-wildfire landslides have become more frequent in California, with one destroying a home in LA just last week.
A lot of the storms that we feel along the West Coast, all the way from Alaska to Baja, are driven by atmospheric rivers. And so these big weather systems are able to hold more moisture because of the increased temperature. So that's a big one. Fire is a huge one that makes landscapes more susceptible to landslides.